this is Mötley Crüe Too Fast for Love album review. Why Mötley Crüe? Well, why not? Mötley Crüe is making a comeback from like their 2015 retirement. They said so often like we will never come back, and here they are. Who knows if it's the power of money, the power of love for music, or the love for the fans, or maybe all of them at the same time. But hey, here they are. They're the biggest band of the 80s, bar none, especially from the glam metal era. And hey, I'm happy they're back. I just hope they can, perform well, especially Vince has been having some issues. But anyway, I thought, hey, let's revisit the first album, which is Too Fast for Love once again, and let's see where it all began. But first, before we get started, the members are Nicky Sixx in the bass, and he's the main songwriter, Vince Neil in the vocals, Mick Mars on the guitar, and Tommy Lee on the drums. Now, if I have to summarize the music in this album, and generally speaking, Mötley Crüe is high energy, fun, party, straight ahead rock and roll mayhem. I just made it up like the wrestlers do, but the showmanship over the music. The music is second to them. It's good, and they have some musicality like Mick Mars with his solos and stuff like that, but that goes after the look and the stage and everything that I just said. Now, if we go more specifically, first, the songwriting of this album. The more I listened to it, I did start liking it more, but I couldn't help but feel like the songs started to sound the same, and I have a few reasons for this. Number one, the tempo didn't vary too much. You had like Live Wire, the first song, is probably the fastest one in the whole album, and then the rest of the songs are like mid-tempo. You don't really have any real ballads at all. Like Merry Go Round has kind of like a ballady sound in the beginning, or On With The Show also sounds a little ballady, but they're not real ballads, not like a love song that makes the girls fall in love with the singer. If that's what you're coming for, you will not find it. But the songs are very high energy, and well, a negative that I do find it is that in the choruses, a lot of the choruses simply repeat the title of the song over and over again. And it works, I guess. I mean, a lot of their hits are here. But me personally, as a musician, I do prefer a little more thought into it. And when I was reading the lyrics, in many of these songs, you would just see the same title repeated, like merry-go-round. It's just merry-go-round, 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 merry-go-round. But at the same time, for example, that song in particular is pretty catchy, but you get what I'm saying, right? Another thing is the techniques are very repeated throughout. Number one, you have palm muted arpeggios. That's for like 3 songs that kind of sound almost ballady. It's because of that. A lot of staccato, especially in some of the verses. And staccato is basically you hit a note, and then you mute it instantly. Like hit the chord and instantly mute it. That's staccato, and you see a lot of that here. You also have pedal point riffs, which means, and this is like bread and butter for the glam metal guitarists. And pedal point riffs is basically you hit that low note consistently, and then you kind of alternate it with a changing melodic chords or notes. All of these 3 techniques are repeated throughout, and that may be a reason why it starts sounding the same. But still, I mean, the songs are pretty good, and once again, the purpose of just having fun and forgetting about your problems, things like that, these songs do succeed at that purpose. Next, we have the production. The production is not bad, but it was 1982, it was before the glam metal was actually developed, because when you think of glam metal, you think high production like Firehouse. I always use Firehouse because I love their production. Also, Warrant has amazing production, but in this album it still sounds a little bit like they just got out of the 70s, which it's true. I mean, it's 1982. Then you have, you know, the drums. I would prefer if they were a little better mixed. I mean, every instrument has their own sonic space, which is good, but the drums do sound a little like they belong to the 70s. I would prefer more punch on the snare, you know. The feels of the drums are pretty good though. That would go more to the performance. The tone overall of the mix, if I have to summarize it, is it's pretty dry. That's what I'm trying to say. When you think 80s in general, not even rock or metal, you have in the pop too, it's a lot of reverb and a lot of delay, not dryness. But this mix, on the other hand, like the guitar and the bass and the drums, they're all very dry. Even the vocals are dry. You don't have that much reverb in the vocals themselves. So I personally prefer more reverb and delay. It just blends the music better. But hey, I think that's what they were going for. So it sounds a little more classic rock or classic metal in that sense. But still, it's a good mix, and you can appreciate every instrument for what they are. The bass is very loud, and I'm not surprised because Nicky Six is like the main guy of the band, like that's his band, and like mentioned before, he's the main songwriter, so makes sense that his bass is a little louder than what most bassists have, but still, it's not like it is just a huge wave of bass on top of everything else. It's everything is well balanced in that sense. Then you go to the vocals. Vince Neil has never been known as a great singer or the best singer, not back then and certainly not now. But his voice is very unique. Like some of the vocals of this era were pretty good, but I've heard many people be like, this singer sounds like a generic glam metal singer or something. Vince Neil doesn't have that problem. You hear his voice and you're like, that's Vince Neil. So number one, that's a good point. Number two, his voice is just made for this genre. So if I had to choose somebody else for Mötley Crüe, I would not. Like, Vince Neil fits the band both in stage and vocally perfectly, but he does lack a lot of technique. That's why you'll never see him in a top 10 list or a top 100 list. If it's a legit list, you will not see him. He does not have any vibrato, and there was one song or a few songs that he holds the note long, but then the note died very quickly. It's like, oh, he ran out of breath, so he doesn't have much technique. But it works, and he sings on pitch, at least on the records, so that's pretty good. Then we have the solos. Mick Mars, one of the most underrated guitarists, but it makes sense. He's kind of like an opposite to the rest of the band in that he's not very, like, he doesn't have that much enthusiasm in the stage, because you know he has his disease and things like that, so he's always like standing up playing, but you know, he compensates by actually, in my opinion, being the most talented in the band, and he has a lot of technicality. He shows it off in some of the solos here. Some of the songs are amazing because of his riff work and because of his solos. There's a bunch of good solos, okay? He uses a lot of pentatonic, but a few songs do use some of the modes. Like, there were a few solos that sounded a little Phrygian, which is kind of like, you know, you think the Egypt songs, like that kind of sound. I heard a little bit on some of the solos, but pretty good guitarist. He's not the flashiest. His playing does not sound, you know, like flashy in the sense of Red Beach from Winger or Vito Bratta, you know, or Van Halen. He's not in the same category. He's kind of like a 70s guitarist in an 80s band. Lastly, we have to give some highlights. We have Live Wire. We have Take Me to the Top. We have the first one that I had in the intro, which is On With The Show. Starry Eyes was okay. Most of the songs are about fun and whatever and have no meaning. Starry Eyes kind of had like a little bit of meaning in the verses, and the chords are a little sad, so that's good, but most of the songs again sound kind of similar to the other, so I can't really give that many highlights, but the songs are not bad either. They're good, but they're not incredibly amazing. They're not anything that had not been done yet, and I'm not a big fan of the mix, but it works. It does not neglect the sound. It's just a personal preference. So objectively speaking, it's a good mix. So overall, if I have to qualify the album, I would give it a 7.5 over 10. But for what they were doing, it would probably be a 10 over 10. That's where they're the top guys. But it's just my personal preference. I prefer other musicians with more technicality and with more meaning in their songs. But for what they were going, it was good. So I enjoyed it. It was a good album. It's a great band. Great live band, especially. So hey, we'll see how the concerts go now that they're making the return. Don't forget to subscribe and give a like if you like this. There will be more reviews coming in the future, and just rock on. Hey, check this glove. It's like the album cover, but I put it in my right hand because I'm a rebel. Let's go. Free, little bit better than it used to be.